My full name is Raymond Stanislaus Dower III, and we've shortened that to Rock over the years because it was a lot easier for people to say. We moved to West Newbury when I was in the 8th grade in 1958, and to 214 Main Street. And we found out later that the front of the house was used as a beauty salon because my dad was wondering, why are the receptacles 3 feet off the ground, off the floor? And that's because to plug in the hair dryers and all that stuff. So that was that.
And are there any particular places in town, like homes, farms, roads, cemeteries, buildings, or anything like that that's connected to your personal history?
Other than the fire station, not much. We did, I was in Boy Scouts for a short time, and the American Legion Hall was where we had a lot of our meetings. Then I got into 4-H, and we were raising sheep and pigs and things like that. So basically the home, the fire station, and the Legion, which is infamous out of his own right. Well, I started my career here not realizing it was going to be a career when I was 18 years old, and a lot of my friends were already on the fire department. I had started school early at 5. So when I was a senior, I was 17, and some friends of mine were 18, and they had joined the fire department, and so I decided to go along with them, not realizing that I would be obsessed with it over the years, and became chief. I never was a lieutenant. The Board of Fire Engineers in West Newbury gave an exam for everyone to take, and there was a lieutenant's job open and 2 captain's jobs, and when all was said and done, none of the present lieutenants wanted to take the test, and so I was moved right up to captain. And that was a little difficult because all the lieutenants had more experience than I did and were older than me. But we sat down and worked things out. And then I was put on the Board of Fire Engineers, working with Dick Birkenbush, who was chief, and to Russell Mingo, who was assistant chief. And as things went, I think it was like 19 or 19 and a half years as fire chief. And then I turned 65. And in Massachusetts, you have to retire as fire and police when you're 65. So that was about it.
What year did you start with fire department?
1964. 1964.
And how much time was there between when you started and when you became chief?
Boy. I was 20. Probably 20-something years. I was captain for a number of years, and I was a deputy chief for a few years, and then I was assistant chief, and that's all designed by the number of trumpets you have in your badge. And if you're familiar with the badges, 1 trumpet is a lieutenant, 2 trumpets is a captain, 3 trumpets is a deputy, 4 trumpets is a assistant chief, and 5 trumpets on a badge is a full chief. So it's a paramilitary type organization, how you rise up in the ranks. I know some people don't like hearing that, but it's exactly how it has to run, because you don't have time to explain. And this is brought on to me by the chief I took over from. Explained to me that, you don't have time sometimes to explain it to people. Why are we doing this? I just said do it, when you're the chief. We'll explain it later. We don't have time to discuss it. So you have to have the rank and file make sure that everybody's on the same page. And it worked well. I was very fortunate. I had some really good men under me and women under me. I think I was the first fire chief to put a woman on, and that worked out pretty well.
What was, give me a sense of what the West Newbury Fire Department was like in 1964, 1968, that time frame when you first started.
Well, it was a lot of fun. We went to different classes. They had in Topsfield at the state park down there. They had a fire training place, and so we didn't have to go out to Stowe or anything like that. But so a bunch of us would get together. We took classes together. Myself and 2 or 3 other guys went up to the Meadowood Training Academy, which is in the Keene, New Hampshire area, and stayed overnight out there. But everybody wanted to drive the big red one, and so we all got a chance to do that. There were some people that didn't want to get involved, but when you're a call fire department, you take what you can get. So I mean, there were some people that I don't want to go in. I'll run the pumps. I'll always make sure you have water or something like that, or help clean up and things like that. And then you had the parades and stuff, and you bring the apparatus, get it all polished up for Memorial Day, and any other out-of-town parades is always good. You want to brag about your equipment and what you can do. And there's a good camaraderie with all of that, And some people can understand it, some don't. Most of the military people understand how that works because they've gone through it. But when you go to another part of the country, a bunch of us had gone out to New York, and we stopped at a station, knocked on the door. A young fella came and says, "Hey, we're out-of-town firefighters. We'd like to see what you got for apparatus. Why don't you have any of your own?" And I looked at the chief, and finally an older person coming, got some out-of-town guys from Massachusetts, and they want to look at our fire apparatus. The guy goes, "Well, let them in." They do that? He said, but that's how different it is. And this is out in Long Island. And it's funny because I just found out that my pulmonologist was a fire chief growing up out in Long Island at a called fire department. They've got cities and towns that have 30,000 population that's all called departments. And they have a bar area on weekends. They open up the bar, and that's how they raise some of their money. One week it's for the fire department. The next week it's for their muster crew, and their muster crew is different. They don't have hand tubs. They have souped up fire trucks and have races and things like that. So it's different wherever you go, different town. But the camaraderie is there, much like if you've been following in Boston, the firefighter that died, and that was one of the biggest funerals I've ever seen. I watched the whole thing yesterday morning. It was heartbreaking. It really was.
It was. His daughter spoke. She did a beautiful job.
They all did.
Yeah.
They all did a great job.
They did.
But I lost a lot of friends not through fire department as such, but just we're all getting older. A good friend of mine became the fire chief of Swampscott, Mass. We went to college together. We were both going to be business teachers, and that didn't turn out right. My dad died in '67, and I wound up having to leave school and get a job at the time. I was going back for my 5th year. I had to finish up a couple things, and I just said, I just can't do this any longer,
So you didn't finish college?
No, I didn't. I was my student teaching, and one course I couldn't pass, which was shorthand. They've changed it that you don't have to take shorthand anymore. It's kind of past. But like I said, this is in 1967, and I just couldn't do it. My grandfather tried to teach. My grandfather was a business ed teacher, and he learned both types of shorthand. You have Greg shorthand, and the other one is more the length of the strokes and the thickness. You can't use a ballpoint pen in Pittman shorthand because you got to have a thin stroke or a dark stroke. I don't know why I remembered that, because it was so bad, I guess.
You're traumatized.
I was. It was ridiculous. But I also, being the class clown at Pentucket, that carried me over into Salem State, because I became the Viking. We're known as the Salem State Vikings. And so they wanted me to become the Viking. I became the Viking. I had a beard back then. I haven't shaved since 1967. And I became the Viking. And after, we had a great basketball team at the time. And after the games, we'd go to Bertini's Italian Pub on Canal Street in Salem. And if I wore my Viking outfit there, I was given a free beer. So,
I would hope.
Yeah.
I would hope.
I tried to sneak out the back door and come back in the front door, but that didn't work. The biggest change is the equipment. And I got to think it's a lot of the liabilities. I can't imagine what a fire truck manufacturer pays for liability insurance, because if something goes wrong, it's going to cost somebody. And we, when I got on, we had one truck down on Gardner Street, which the guys put together. It was an old oil delivery truck that they used so they could bring, at the time, we didn't have any trucks that carried more than 600 gallons of water. Now we have a tanker that carries 3,000 gallons of water, and 2 fire trucks each carry 1,000 gallons of water. And interesting thought on the Garden Street Fire Station is that was all put together around 1940 and 1941. That was schoolhouse number 9. I believe it was out on Turkey Hill Street. And it was dismantled and brought down to where the Garden Street Station is now and made into a fire station. And then it was getting old and decrepit, and when we had storms and we were manning the fire stations, we had to sleep on top of the fire trucks and the hose beds because there was no room to anyplace else. And when you got to when the fire alarm rang, there's a big siren on Blocks Hill, which is across from Church Street. It's a great big, when that thing wound up going, I mean, everybody in town heard it. And so you ran to the station. First man in would pick up the phone, find out where the fire is, and then write it on the blackboard that it was at the station, so other people that would come in would be able to know where the fire was and take the other piece of apparatus. So it was archaic, but I was always proud of the fact that we got the job done with what we had. And of course, mutual aid is a big deal, and excuse me, and New Hampshire always did it well because they had so many call fire departments together. If an alarm came in and somebody got there real early and radio back, it might be a working fire, they sent 2 or 3 other towns. And we're getting to that point now, especially where a lot of the fire departments have their own ambulances. And that has kept Newbury busy because Newbury also runs a paramedic service. And we have our ambulance come out of Newburyport, private Atlantic ambulance. Cataldo, it's all the same. So, like I said, and the price. I mean, the equipment they're coming out with, I mean, some of the stuff is great. Geez, I wish I had this when I was 20 years old, you know? But the cost of a good ladder truck is $1 million now. And regular pumps were, some was around 450, 500,000 for a regular pump. We were the small company at first. A company in Massachusetts made our first 2 or 3 fire trucks, and they went out of business. Were bought by a bigger company and done. And that's what's happening. It's probably only going to be maybe not even a half a dozen fire truck manufacturers. Probably another 10 years. There's only several ones right now, and the price and the equipment. But most of the equipment has a good use for it. You know, now they got automatic CPR machines. You slide the person in, and they have a thumper that is timed, and it keep doing CPR on somebody. Like I said, it's the price and how much you pay for everything. So.
And that was a big part of your job as chief, was managing the equipment, purchasing equipment, identifying what you need. Right. Is that right?
It was a real big part. I tried to get a lot of the guys interested in different things, and it's part of it. Like the set of Jaws of Life. That's a brand name put out by Hearst Tools. And we had Hearst come in, we had 2 or 3 other companies come in, and they showed their equipment and all that stuff. Hearst was the first one, but the guys didn't seem to like that. They liked the Amkiss tool better, and I agreed with them. I thought it was a better tool at the time. And you know, the spreaders and the scissors. And so I said to the guys, I says, well, which one do you want? I says, I don't care. I'm not going to run them. I says, you guys are going to run them. So you guys pick what you feel is comfortable for you. And now they're battery operated. It's incredible. These batteries, they can't build a battery that will work on my flashlight and stay lit all the time. But they got these big batteries and they're not that big. And Groveland picked up a pair, and gosh, they work good. Really, I went to a demonstration, and that's the amazing part, because sometimes, you know, with the way people drive nowadays, just the other day out on 95, they were looking for a car that was crashed. Well, it was so far into the woods they couldn't find him. Finally, the guy came out of the woods and flagged down somebody on the highway. But you could take those Jaws of Life and right into it. The way the first ones that come out, you had to start a motor up on a portable hydraulic machine to run the hoses out to the jaws and things like that. And now you got to learn the different ways of opening different doors, because everybody's different. So,
right,
yeah.
That's right. Wow. And how many volunteers were there back in the 60s versus now?
We probably had a roster of maybe 10. I mean, of 20, not 10, of 20, but 10 we could count on probably. Yeah. But then again, where you don't have them, you don't know where they're going to be. You don't know, you know. I just asked some of the guys that if you're going to go away for a week, I said, let me know if you're on vacation, so I know, you know, that I can't count on you, especially if you're the guy that knows more than whatever. You know, I had one fellow on the department. He was a lieutenant, but he worked for the state. Then he went on his own, but he was really good as far as hazmat stuff goes. I mean, because that's what he did for the state. So I'd always pick, you know, part of your job is know what the guys can do, and how they're going to help you. So we always worked well that way.
Yeah, it's tricky because they're not your employees; they're volunteers, but you still have to treat them.
You do. I mean, finally, I had to go to the selectman one time, and I says, I know you guys don't like to pay us, it seems, but these guys, we're taking CPR refresher classes with the police. And the police are getting time and a half to do this. So they're walking out the door with $25-$30. My guys are walking out the door with $750, because back then we were paid by the call, not by the hour.
Was just the chief on salary?
Pardon me?
Were you on salary?
No.
No.
Oh no, I
You
got
were
paid
by the call too.
Yeah, just like the rest, like the regular guys.
Okay.
So I said, I think we got to come up with a little bit fairer, way you're going to start losing people, because they don't really need this job, And so we were able to do that. And then a while later, the town treasurer at the time talked to selectmen into coming up with an idea to pay the guys by the hour. And I said to the treasurer, I said, I don't have enough money in my budget to pay everybody by the hour. Well, let's see how it goes. So at the end of the year, I had to go before the finance committee for an emergency fund transfer. I said, I'd like to get paid. Paid all the guys, and myself and the other two members of the Board of Engineers hadn't gotten paid yet. And so, had it all added up. But I still have, I had a steno book. So everything I did, I'd get out of work. I worked over at Whittier Tech as head of maintenance, and I'd come to the station. I'd get out of work about 2:30. I'd be here by 10 minutes to 3 to meet anybody that had to be met. And so I wrote everything down, my mileage down, because I said, you're going to do this, you could pay for my mileage. I mean, it didn't make sense for me to go up the station, take the pickup truck, go do an inspection, and come back and get my vehicle, because my vehicle had everything in it. At the time, I had a pickup truck with a utility body with all the doors open, because there was always something we could use, so that worked out. And so then now everybody gets paid by the hour like they should. And at some point in time, West Newbury is going to have a couple of full-time guys during the day, because it's tough. We don't have anybody that works in town anymore. Like when I first got on, after I left college, I went to work with Bobby Knowles, and he was on the fire department. His brother Bert was the highway superintendent there for a while, and his other brother Harold was in my class. And all three of those guys, and they lived down on Main Street, down near Garden Street. They were all on the department. So with all your friends, and that's basically what got me on it, was the friendship and the camaraderie you had with these guys.
Yeah.
So
and it's lasted a lifetime.
It did so far. But you never know. And it's funny, I got in a bad accident a number of years ago on Route 213. And my wife was with me, and I don't remember any of it because I was knocked out. And I went to the Methuen Fire Department to thank them for getting us out. And Jill was pulled out by some passerby. That was a problem, that with these airbags, a lot of powder comes out. Okay, so people think the car's on fire. And I had to actually tell our dispatchers at the time, ask them if they see flame. If they don't see flame, do not put out over the air. The car could be on fire. Excuse me, because these guys are going to the station, and all of a sudden the foot starts to get down the accelerator a little bit deeper, And so somebody took my wife out, sat her over on the side. They're putting me in the ambulance, and she came over and he said, he's going to be all right. And the guys turned around and fight. Who are you? Oh, I was with him. I'm his wife. Where'd you go? What are you talking about? Oh, somebody pulled me out of the car and put me over the side of the road. So when I went to the Methuen Fire Department, I wanted to thank the guys. And this lieutenant that was on the job, he says, Chief, he said, we didn't know how serious you were injured. I said, why not? He said, because you never shut up. And that's always been a thing with me, that I talk a lot. And he says, you were asking, did they use the jaws? What kind of jaws we use? You want to know how many trucks were there? He says, I couldn't believe it. And he says, so when I went home, I asked my dad, I said, do you know the fire chief of West Newbury? He says, yeah, that's Rock. He just got in a bad accident. He says, oh my God. He says, he can talk. He says, I know that. So that was one funny thing that, And that's the only thing that I ever got dinged on over at the school. You know, when I had to go for a review, they said, "You seem to spend too much time talking with other people." I said, "But the job gets done though, and it's a good job, right?" Well, yeah. So I guess that's a habit I probably never lose.
No.
Oh, about the Gardner 4?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was we lucked out on that. It always had a good record. It was a great pump. It was built for musters because they had steam engines back there in the 1880s. And but you can't have a hand tub built nowadays to go into competition with the New England States Veteran Firemen's Association, or League actually. And Steve Cashman had heard about this hand tub that the Maine VFA, Veteran Firemen's Association, had it up for sale. And you know, we had a meeting with a bunch of guys, and they said, "Well, we ought to go after it." We were borrowing a hand tub from North Reading called the Edwin A. Whiting. It wasn't a bad hand tub, but it was big and bulky, and we needed a lot of guys to pump it. So, and I can't remember whether we paid rent or we just borrowed it because they weren't going to do anything with it. So, for 1 year, we did have both hand tubs pumping, you know. But we went up there to pick it up. He had a trailer, and we got to this building, and a couple of the old timers were saying, "Well, we looked at our records, and we kind of made a mistake. And oh, we can't sell it for $200, $200." And you know, geez, why not? Well, our bylaws said we can't sell anything for less than what we paid for it. And I went, oh my God, I can't imagine what they paid for it. And this was back in the late 60s, because our first muster we won in 67. So this could have been like 65 or something like that. And we was, oh my God, well, how much do you need? Well, we paid $250 for it. So everybody's scrambling. We dug up another $50 among us. They're taking home, yeah, $250. When Gardner, Mass had it, they had it built to beat a hand tub that they had in another fire company on the other side of town, and that was called the Bobbies. I don't understand, B-A-W, and then the B, capital B-E-E-S-E, the Bobbies. Never did find out what that meant. But hand tub names are all over the spectrum, high, some made sense, others didn't. And anyway, we got a letter from somebody in the fire department up there that they went to the Attorney General and would be subject to fines and possibly arrests and all this stuff because we basically stole the hand tub, they said. And I said, you're basically right when it comes to, but we had a lawyer here, and I can't remember his name right now. He said, I'll help you guys out. So he went and thought, no, they owned it, the VFA owned it, and they had every right to sell it. And so anyway, at one point in time, we didn't go to any Maine musters for a year, maybe 2 years, because we didn't know what they were going to do. But then we got a thing saying, no, they sold it. Then we had one guy come to a league meeting, and I'm a life member of that. I'm a life member of the Essex County Fire Chiefs, Mass State Fire Chiefs. But this guy showed up. He was writing a history, and he says, what you guys did by taking that hand tub. I goes, wait a minute, you didn't have the hand tub from Gardner, Mass is the only one that might have a thing, but they sold it to a private entity who had it for a while, and then that person sold it to Maine. So I said, shame on you. And the only reason they sold that hand tub was, now these guys are all in their 80s. They didn't have enough money to pay for the electricity to put the lights on in the building. It was. And the next year we were going to a hand tub muster in Hampton. And we called up and told them, we're taking the Gardner out. We're going to Hampton.
And what year was this? 66?
Probably 66, 67 in there someplace. And they came down on a bus. From Maine to see the hand tub. It means a lot to me. I'm getting choked up about this. You should have seen these guys. They were holding on to each other, watching this thing go. And it's tough. It's tough. I pity those guys. I know what they went through, and they were just glad to see it work. Yeah. And put it that way. And we won the muster.
Did you?
We did.
Oh, that's perfect.
It is. Our first championship was in 1967, and we won the muster down in Rhode Island. I think it was Peacedale, Rhode Island, and it was in like a park area. And we know if we won that muster, we won the championship because they took your three best shots, your three best streams, and averaged them together. And we were leading, and we won that muster, so we knew nobody could go by us. And so we got the band going. I was playing the cymbals at the time. I played baritone, horn, tuba, cymbal, whatever they needed. And we're going out through the beautiful gate. We got the hand tub on the trailer, and we're coming through and the police officer, he's out to Route 1. Where you going? I said, back to West Newbury. What the heck's that? And I said, up in Massachusetts. What are you talking about? We just won the league meeting. Our first. So I'm playing, the band's playing, the hand tub guys, and we're marching right up. Finally, the police showed up. We go, all right, you guys have gone far enough, he said. So, yeah, pack it up and go back to West Newbury. So we get back to town, and we always would take the fire trucks out, and sirens and everything, just go right down the square, turn around, and come back again. So my dad had cancer real bad, and he was home, and so a couple of the guys said, let's go to Rock's house, and because I had two brothers, one brother played the trombone, my other brother was in the color guard, so we all lined up in front of my dad's, our house, and we played a couple of songs from him. I remember my aunt and his sister, my aunt and my mother held my dad up to the window so he could wave to us, and so from that day on, we always lined up down there on Merrill Street and marched all the way down through. Police chief at the time was Shike Willis, and he said, you're supposed to get permission from the police chief to have an unauthorized parade. I said, look, Shike, if you want to lead the parade, go for it. I'll get the cruiser. And he went home and got the cruiser and led us on the, right down the middle of the road. Shike had the blue lights going and everything else, and we did it. And that was our first league win, and we won 6 more after that. Yeah, we had a good turnout. When we started coming back and getting some interest, a couple of years ago, I said to the guy that drives the pickup truck, he's got a pickup truck to haul a hand tub around, and I said, Mike, I says, when you show up down in the Newbury Green, I said, we didn't want to do a pump, but I talked to them that we want to go there and because you have to draw, they got this big cistern thing they fill with water so you can draw a suction on it and pump the hand tub. I want to see what's going on, and I don't have that kind of thing. Yeah, no problem. I'll wait till the end. And I said, when you show up, you're not gonna believe it. He said, what do you mean? I said, you're gonna show up with the Gardner 4, and you're gonna make a lot of guys real nervous. And he did. He showed up and parked over there, and all of a sudden it was like, the lemmings jumping off it was. He said, I never saw anything like it in my life. They all come running over, and the guy said, Rock, are you pumping it today? Not today. I said, we're just gonna see how it works and if there's anything we have to do to it. But there was a lot of people that were real nervous about it. If we could only get a decent crew, we're hoping we can get a good crew on July 18th. We're sponsoring a muster here in town. So been a long time since we had a muster in town. We used to have them out in front of Pentucket, but now it's all fields out there and everything. We had them behind Pentucket, and so let's see what happens. Hopefully the people in town will back us up and get some young fellas to show up and pump. It's a workout. You got 15 minutes to take as many shots as you can. Or as you want to. I mean, we've gone to musters where we've taken one good shot, and you got to get off what they call, where are they? The blocking, which is over in the corner there, that the wheels go in, and you got 15 minutes, and you have to be out of your blocks before the gun goes off of that 15 minutes, or you'll lose your last stream. So sometimes if you got a good stream and you don't want to lose it, you take another quick one. As long as they can record it, that would be the one you lose, if that's not the one you're going to win with anyway. So sometimes you just got to get fast. If you take your last stream and, oh my God, I got a minute left and it was a good stream, you got to hustle the heck out of there. So sometimes people can get hurt if they're not paying attention. So we do the best we can and keep it safe for everyone. But it's a lot of fun. It's history right there,
Well, that's for people who don't know anything about hand tubs or musters. Explain, just the basic premise and the history of it?
Well, the basic premise is that whoever gets the longest stream of water, it has to be a drop of water the size of a dime, and they lay out the orange building paper on, they usually on the ground. They can't lay it on the ground too much because it'll get wet, but they have it on the old wooden snow fencing, and they roll that out and then roll the paper. You have to have a good paper crew because sometimes you got to hustle to get that paper out there. If the wind starts to blow it out, because we have flags on poles, and if the flags start to get down the line, you got to get the paper out there. People are going to be upset, so you have to be careful with that. And then you take your stream, and at the end, it's mostly Class A and Class B hand tubs, and each one is separately for weighing and stuff like that. Each one has their own group. Even though the week before you draw a number with pumping order you're going to be in. So you may be in the third pumping order, and there may be 2 Class Bs ahead of you, or 2 class something like that. So it's just how the wind is blowing that day, and if the foreman on top is paying attention to the wind, a lot of times I know Danny Cashman would sit there the whole muster time till it was time to pump and watch which way the wind goes, and he'd figure it out. Like especially down the Salisbury Beach, Salisbury anyway. It depends on the tide, which way the wind's going. So.
And you have to move that paper accordingly?
No. You just borrow 300 feet of paper,
okay.
And then they have to change it after each tub is done. But they had competitions, and firefighters have had competitions for years. Actually, my screensaver on my computer is a competition. It's a Currier and Ives print of like 4 or 5 hand tubs and hose carts and everything, fighting a big fire, and it's a great screensaver. I just happened to find it by accident. I just hope a lot of people come to the muster we're going to have and show how this girl works.
Yeah.
She's a good machine.
How many other towns are going to participate? Do you know yet?
Probably, trying to think of how many, because it's a good central location. Because we'll have Connecticut. I know their tub. Oh God, what's the name of the town in Connecticut? Shoot, it's right next to Groton, Connecticut, where they have the ship. Mystic. Oh, yes. Mystic Seaport. Didn't realize. I went down there to see the chief one day. I said, "What's going on?" I didn't realize they're part of Stonington. It's a village in Stonington. It's Mystic, Connecticut. Like the villages down the Cape. They got all sorts of. They had one town. I think it was Barnstable. Had like 6 villages, and they all had their own fire chief. They finally combined a couple of them together. That made sense. But I know they'll be up there. The Rhode Island ones can't leave the state. Because they are still owned by the local fire department.
So they can't take their equipment out of state because it's technically needed?
Not technically needed. It's just that for liability purposes. Oh. Because they could sue the town if something happened. Okay. So. Oh, what a shame. It is a shame. We've gone down there and had a muster because they've had some great. The volunteer hand tub of East Greenwich, Rhode Island is a good tub. I'll say she's equal to this one. Yeah, and we've had some good battles down there. Some good battles. They got the Washington hand tub. South Kingstown, Rhode Island has a hand tub. I can't remember the name of it. But the East Greenwich, Rhode Island, geez, they've got a nice bar area and a restaurant that money goes to them. They've got a big garage that they kept some of the old East Greenwich fire trucks in and use that. We'll get the New Hampshire tubs. We'll get the Maine tubs, the Bath, Maine, and we'll come down with they got a Class A and a Class B hand tub.
How many are there about in New England? Would you be able to estimate?
Oh, there's probably 20, 25, but I mean, if we get 10 at a hand tub muster, it's good. We used to get a lot. We'd start earlier, and right now we're going to probably start at noon, I think, whatever the thing said. And, but it's the way it goes. Hopefully it'll still keep going that way. It's always a good time, so we'll see what happens. The Neptunes haven't been out in a while from Newburyport.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, they, they've got some problems on the upside. They just too much fire water.
Oh, that's a shame.
Mm.
That's over that's over the Neptune Club down the south end. They have a hand tub.
Yeah, it's called the Neptune 8. What? Yeah, they keep it in that garage. Like if you're looking at keep it in the garage, they actually rolled the whole thing over years ago, and they went and got another hand tub to use till they could get that one put together again.
Because they rolled it over and
on the way home from Mustard, Maine. Oh yeah, about killed it. It is, but they were able to find enough parts and put the whole basic thing back together again. As long as you got the inside stuff, the pistons and all that stuff, you can always that was the original box, right there. We always had the idea. We always had the idea of maybe making that into some kind of a table or something. But it's kind of awkward. Bobby Knowles did all the work and put the, all of the stuff back on here.
He did all that woodwork?
Yeah. That guy's a craftsman. Yeah. He's a craftsman. I remember when I was working for him, he said, well, I'm giving up the business. I'm going to Australia with the Wycliffe Bible translators. They got to build a church or something down there. I hadn't seen him for a couple of years. He was there. So he came home at the food mart. And he said, Rock, I want you to meet. I got married. I want you to meet my wife. This is Jillian. And so she says, oh, how are you? And he goes, wow, what an accent. You're from Seabrook? And she hit me. I've heard about them Seabrookers you people talk about. And poor Bobby's so embarrassed. I said, that's okay. I've been hit before.
I can see that. Oh, that's hysterical.
Oh, God. No, he's a great guy. His younger brother, Harold, was in my class. He died of Agent Orange last year. Oh. He did, the Army's good, the Navy's good. You're only supposed to serve one term duty in Vietnam. He was in the Seabees, Navy Seabees, which is their construction team. They built all sorts of stuff. He was there for 11 months and they pulled him. Then they sent him back for another 11 months after he was home for a couple of months, Not a rotten thing to do. But that Agent Orange finally got to him. He slept with a knife under his pillow, he said. They didn't know. Who do you trust? Believe me, it's hard to tell the difference between North and South Vietnam. Actually, his sister's still over there.
In Vietnam?
No, Australia.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Yeah, in Australia. Firehouses would compete against each other on the way to a real fire. They'd try to trip the other guys up if they were running to the fire with the hand tub. I mean, the last guy on duty that showed up had to go buy the beer. I mean, this thing's unbelievable. Then you had the fire markers on the houses. If you didn't have an insurance marker on your house, the owner of the house and the fire captain, whoever was in charge of that group, would haggle out a price of how much it was going to cost the guy to put the fire out.
Oh, was that right?
Oh, yeah. And some of these old fire markers are worth a lot of money. I have a couple, and I have some reproduction ones. They're all metal, and some of them are beautiful,
Did they use those just in the city, or did they use them in West Newbury and places like
No,
that?
they did. No, mostly in the city.
Yeah.
Because they had so many fire apparatus and colorful. Oh, my gosh. There's a fire museum out in Hudson, New York, which I've been to, and they have a fire patch out there. There's 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth, and they've got probably 300 patches from all the different. It's amazing. They've got old fire truck, old hand engines. It's quite neat to go out there. My wife and I were out there to see her son. He was in West Point, so we swung into Hudson. And it's also an old age home for retired firefighters too. And not for full-time guys. They had to be a call firefighter someplace to be in this thing. And there are some full-time guys out of New York that live in the suburbs, and they're on a call fire department. They can go in. And they used to have the old-timers take you around in the museum. And we went out there, and I was explaining to my wife, the guys, they got quite a thing going. And as we come out, I waved to the guy. I had a shirt on, fire shirt or something. He said, what do you? I said, well, I'm chief in West Newbury. That's town in Massachusetts, just north of Boston. Hey guys, we got a chief here. They took us down, brought us into they were having a barbecue. We ate and drank for nothing. They wouldn't let us pay a dime. You know, it was cool. Yeah, really enjoyed that. So it's like I say, it's the camaraderie you have with the guys that you work with, you live with. You're happy with them, you're sad with them. You know, we had West Newbury had a hand tub back in the 20s, and it was called the Volunteer Hand Tub. I believe that's now in the Henry Ford's museum. He's got a museum. Yeah. Also, our steamer is in there. Yeah, yeah. He took our steamer too. He sent somebody. He says, I'm going to have a museum, and it's going to be the best museum around. So he sent some guys with a boatload of money, and they came east because there's nothing out there that's old. You know, guys from California come out here, and we had an antique guy, Vern Burnham, down the street down here, and he said he got friendly with these guys that come out from fly out from California, buy a box truck, go to his place, buy everything he had right there, and then go back and triple what they paid out in California because they don't really have old stuff out there. Know a guy that would buy all sorts of leather helmets. A leather helmet today, no leather helmet today, you're talking $500-600, and he'd buy leather helmets and take them out to California or someplace out west and sell them. Now our steamer, a friend of mine went out there at the Henry Ford Museum. He tried to take a picture of it, but it's stuck in the corner. Unfortunately, it's not like the Smithsonian where they change things every year for different things you can see. It's just thrown there. So that's why on one of the trucks I had a sign painter. He put the the patch on, and West Newbury Fire Department. He also wrote Hayden Brown Steam Fire Company Engine 1, and the date April 9th, 1884, I believe, is when we were first formed. I had him put it on the side door of the fire truck. A couple of young fellows, what's that? I says, that's when we were formed. Why would you put that on there? I said, I had to make you guys take a test on the history before I put you on. But people didn't, like Newburyport, they had probably 5 or 6 different fire stations where they had hand tubs or steamers throughout the city. And they had different names on it. Chief Cutter put the name of that hand tub on every new piece of apparatus. So he's got the different names on the front of it. I had one at one time, they said, we still make house calls across the front of it. So just trying to outdo somebody, so that, and
does that steamer in the Henry Ford Museum still have that lettering with West Newbury and
I'm guessing, I'm hoping it does. It wouldn't be worth anything if you didn't have it on there, But back then we had Hayden Brown owned a shoe manufacturing company in West Newbury. And I think it was down the end of Pleasant Street, and it caught on fire. Excuse me. And they had to call Haverhill for mutual aid. Groveland didn't have anything. And I know they was very appreciative of the help that they brought in. And that's why when they formed the fire department, Hayden Brown gave half the money, I think, for to buy a steamer back in 1884. And the town raised the rest of the money. That's how Gilman Brown, his son, became our first fire chief. When your dad buys half the fire, and gets things going, you're going to be the chief.
You've got all the trumpets.
Yep, that's right. He's got them all. So that's how that started.
Were you the chief when the Ford Museum bought those 2 pieces?
Oh, God, no.
Okay.
I'm only 80. No.
I didn't know what year they bought them.
I'm going to guess it was probably the late 40s or maybe the early 50s. So they needed room. That's why, the station that's there now used to be next to the Catholic Church. It's now the parking lot to the Catholic Church, and it was a 1-bay station. And then when we got our first piece of motorized kit, I think it was 1923. He bought the first fire truck. They widened the front of it and supported it so it was a double door. So the steamer and the first motorized kit could fit in there. And then where the station is now, they built a station. And a few years ago, that station was getting, I think it was 1960, 59 or 60. When we had that one built in, we got the okay to buy a combination station with fire and police, and that's when that went up, just a few years back. I was still chief then, and God, our first modern piece of equipment was a 1956 Ford, and like I said, we had a homemade truck down at Garden Street, and then we had the Ford here.
When you say homemade, you mean it was made locally?
Yeah, the guys put it together. It was an old.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, and they just put a small pump on it just to get some water to the scene, you know. But we went to the big Chelsea fire. I went to the big Lynn fire, and the big fire they had in Lawrence there at that Malden Mills. We got called mutual aid.
That was in the 70s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse me. They it was funny. I was just checking things out, walking around, and there was one of the city trucks there. I can't remember which city it was, and we can't get a draft. We got to, because they were drafting out of one of the canals in Lawrence. Well, they had their suction hose wrong. I says, you over the fence, you can't do that. You got to take it and punch a hole in the fence and get it under the hole and put it down in there, because it's going to create a vacuum on the top there. Once they did that, they had plenty of water. So the guys, well, he says, we've never done this before. You don't have to. You always had hydrants, but when you got 20 trucks on it, it's sucking all the water up. You got to do something. Mostly accidents. We've had some tough accidents. We had somebody backing out of a driveway and didn't see the motorcycle coming. He got his neck going on. Suicides. That was tough. That was a tough young kid. Some fires. The church fire was probably the biggest fire we had in town.
Which church was that?
It's a Congregational church.
Yeah.
My wife and I, at the time, we were living back home at 214 Main Street. We had rented a house down on Merrill Street, and the owner of the house kept boosting the price up. So anyway, my two sisters had already left the house, my two brothers, so my mother was alone. So we moved in. And the tones went off. My wife at the time was working at Western Electric second shift. And the tones went off, and I said, ooh. So I grabbed my gear. My mother said, you think it's real? I go, they said it was St. Anne's Church, but I said, both churches have fire alarm systems in it. And so anyway, I got right down there, and I radioed back and said, put the tones out again. I said, for a working fire at the Second Congregational Church. And the chief showed up, and I said, I'm going to go up. I had just been working with Bobby Knowles, and we had just got up on top of the archway on the attic of the church and replaced added some beams to the place to shore it up and stuff. So I knew my way around up there. And so I heard the chief call her to get in there, and with the first truck, second truck in, took the hydrant and laid in. And as you're going through the doors, right to the right, there was they took some 2x4s and made a ladder against the wall with a hatch. So I went up the ladder with the wall, threw the hatch on, and crawled to the Groveland side. And just then, I radioed to the chief, and I said, it's in that room. I says, to the left of the church when you're outside looking at it. And that's what was coming up through. Then I heard the hatch slam shut. And I didn't have a light with me, and I couldn't see. It was stupid on my part, but I just didn't bring it. My truck was parked across the street, and thank God. Oh God, the guy just passed away too. He lived out of town. He was part of the church. Anyway, he saw me go up there because there were some people there at the church, and he heard that. He looked up, so he got up on the ladder and was able to push the hatch over. Now I'm way down there, and I'm crawling on my hands and knees, feeling around and making sure that, and I saw that shaft of light boy, and I beat feet that, and I came down the thing almost head first, because it was getting warm. Yeah. And
was there smoke?
Oh yeah. And the chief had already called for third alarm, and I think we went to like 4 alarms, and we were beating it back. The Newburyport was on top of the school part of it. And I said to the deputy, I says, Deputy, I don't want, he says, if we don't have to take out that window, because it was all stained glass on the back. I said, don't know. He says, if it gets here, though, yeah. I says, then you got to take it out. So just hang in there. If we can open up next to it, maybe we can get a line in there. And the Havel chief come over to me. He said, Rock, I think we're going to save this building. I said, I know. I said, and one guy was there, and he says, I'll be back tomorrow. I know who he was. Okay. Well, he showed up. He was a ex fire chief in out in the western part of the state, or western part of the country. And he was teaching fire science courses up at UNH. And he brought a film crew down there. And he says, I've never seen a church saved with that much fire before. And I says, I know. I said, we're just a call department. We don't know that you're not supposed to go in the church and fight it from the outside. Oh, excuse me, I got to...
We got edits for.
So one of the guys, we're trying to get up and hook the ceiling, pull some ceiling down. I wasn't going to get out on top of it because I knew it wasn't structurally safe to actually put your weight on. So they put a ladder across the top of the pews, and then stuck another ladder on top of that so they get a little bit more height, and ran it up and drove it up and opened it up. And it was one guy hanging on the rafters, jumping up and down, trying to get the ceiling down as best he could. And we saved it. It burnt a hole through that side. If you look at the church at the left-hand side, it had burnt a hole through, so we already had a place where the fire could go and the smoke could go. And it worked out. We saved the building. I mean, it's all repairable. So a couple days later, the chief called me up and said, I'm meeting with the insurance people. He says, meet me at the church. So I met him at the church. And this guy, he was an ex-Chelsea firefighter. I found out his name afterwards. His father was the Chelsea chief when the Chelsea gone to that fire. So I said, well, geez, I'm not going to be impressed with him because I wasn't impressed with his father. Because we went to the Chelsea fire. That was like a movie, like a John Wayne movie. The Sands of Iwo Jima, everything was burning. But anyway, the guy goes, well, I figured like 40% of the church burnt, so you'll get 40% of your... Wait a minute. You know doggone well there's over $1 million worth of damage right here. You know, don't start with that. I says, and Dick's sitting there, the chief's sitting there. I knew if I brought you along. So I went up one side, down the other. They finally, the insurance company paid whatever the top. I mean, 40% burnt, so only give you 40% of it. No, that's not the way it works, you clown. But yeah. So while the fire was going, it was pretty much out at the time. A film crew showed up. I think it was from WBZ. There was a guy. What was his name back then? But I recognized him. And the chief, I'm standing by the front door watching the guy, and the chief, Rock, he said, these people want to look inside. He said, talk to him. All right. Tom Ellis. I don't know if you remember that name or not from back then. Well, he's a short guy. I didn't realize it. You're sitting down next to, he probably had a chair that, came up. And he started talking, and I didn't realize he's from Texas, and he had a real twang in his voice. I said, wow, I said, you talk something different when you're not before the camera. The camera guy started giggling. The woman who was holding the microphone's laughing. He turned and gave them a look. And I said, sorry, I didn't know. And I said, I can't let you go in too far because it's still not safe, but we were able to get it out. And, so he, I wish I had the ability to tape, because a couple of guys called me up and said, hey, we saw you on Channel 4 or something, That's kind of cool. But yeah, that fire, I'll always remember that. We did a good job. Just lucked out in certain areas, but it wound up being savable, which was nice, like a bonfire. It's so open and everything, There's not much you can do about it, You can't shut it off. There was that one. There was, there was one, a person called me up, lived over there by the reservoir. They said, I don't know if you could do anything, Chief, but a guy, my next door neighbor, cut down all my trees. Really? He says, yeah. He says it bothered his line of sight to see the water. It was on a hill. Like this guy here, his backyard had trees in it. This guy couldn't see, so he cut him down. Well, you got to come up with a price if you're going to get him to court, I would think. So I called up Hobart Esty. He owned Esty Lumber. He was a registered forester. So he came up and he took measurements of all the trees and come up with a price of how much it would cost to replace the trees. And it was astronomical. So he and the other guy made some kind of a agreement, a deal or something, because, to replace a 20-foot tree is a lot different than buying a little spruce, So I got involved with that somehow. I don't know why. But it's like, they said there was a guy who wrote a real good book about the New York Fire Department, report from Box 82, I think it was, or something like that. I read it, done by Dennis Smith. And he was a firefighter. And he wrote, you got that red box on the telephone pole, he said. If you get on your phone and you call for help, the police may or may not come. He said, if you had the animal control may or may not come. Anybody, but if you pull that hook on that red box on the telephone pole, somebody's gonna come. And I've always remembered that line. I thought that was pretty good. And it's true. But now they're doing away with that. Now they have radio boxes that they're using. But when you stop and think that we still have the fire alarm system with the wiring and all that stuff, and the street boxes and the master boxes. Mr. Gamewell put that thing together, oh God, way back. I don't remember when, but we stop and think, West Newbury was formed in 1882, and they finally put the fire alarm in. It could be over 100 years old. It hasn't changed. It's that good. It's just the way it works, except for the wires itself. That's why they're going to radio boxes now. But then somebody's got to keep the batteries up, so it is. And like I said, that and we've had some real tough accidents, even before I got on, some tragedies. Some young people had drinking some antifreeze, not knowing what it was, thought it was a wine.
Oh, I heard about that story. I read about it.
Yeah.
It was something that Rick Thurlow wrote.
Yeah. That was I think in 1958, just before we moved into West Newbury. That's why Shike was all upset. A friend of mine was part of that, but he went down to the local drugstore. He wasn't feeling good, got a frap, and was able to, vomit and get it all out of his system. He lucked out. Then there was the Auckland Farms fire that happened right before I moved into town, where they lost a number of horses. They had world champion Morgan horses, Auckland Farms, and there was one called Super Sam, who was the national champion of all Morgan horses in the country. And then they had another horse by the name of London, who took over that thing, and we'd go up there. A friend of mine was working there part-time in the summers and stuff. We'd go up there, and they actually had hay rides with hay and horses. Now it's tractors and maybe fake hay. But you had to be careful. We were only there to make sure that the adults that were on the hay ride weren't taking pieces of hay and throwing them off the side of and that would happen. So that's the only reason we wound up going. I don't know. Like I said, I've been to a lot of big fires that I just thank God I didn't have to do the paperwork. I had no secretary. My clerk was Steve Arnold. He was one of my deputies, and he was good. He did the most of the paperwork for me. Just filling out the payroll, things like that. When it came to that, we used to get paid twice a year. Once in the beginning of June for what we did, and then once at the end of summer towards Christmas. So the guys had a little extra money for Christmas. So that worked out for a while. Small town. Sometimes I know things were said. I tried to brush most of the stuff off. I'm trying to think. It was one time. I'm trying to think of what I was going for. I think it was another pump or something, because I knew the school was coming in for a major renovation, and I wouldn't be able to, get anything. So I just moved up my thing 1 year. So I was at the selectmen, and they weren't happy. And I said, well, the reason I need it is because it's getting old. We don't like to go over 20 years, especially the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, recommends, of course, big cities, they only last 10 years. I mean, they run all the time. Somebody had said, well, geez, they look good. And I said, yeah, they look good. I said, we get a dent, we fix it. I said, we don't want them. I said, we don't want them to look like the highway trucks all rusted and a mess. That didn't go over well with the highway superintendent. And I apologized afterwards. And so the selectman said, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. I said, well, I'm done. I started to walk out. And I said, you know something, guys? If I had realized that once you go through those doors that say selectmen on top of it, you wind up knowing everything there is to know in the world. So I'm going to have all my firefighters become a selectman for a year. Then I won't have to train them. And I walked out the door. Dower, you better get back here. Good night. So, a couple of them got a kick out of it. Not one particular one, but anyway.
Do you remember who was on the select board when that happened?
I remember one person who was always on me.
Who's that?
I'm not going to say.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
And no, that's why I always bought, like that jacket I was wearing. I always bought all my own stuff. Most fire truck manufacturers have a few things built into their bid on a truck. And that's give the chief or the committee, give them a shirt, or a jacket or something like that. So one of my daughters said, hey, Dad, can you get me a fire shirt or something like that? And I said, sure. I got her. So they have their own stores there. This was down at KME and what was the name of the town? It was an Indian sounding name. Anyway, it was in Pennsylvania. So I had a shirt, a jacket, a couple other things. And so the woman says, oh, you're with Bulldog Fire Equipment. And I said, yeah. She says, all right. And whoa. No. What do you mean no? I'm paying for it. Ring it up. You're paying for it? Yeah. I had a couple other guys who each got a job shirt or something, which is a sweatshirt with the, fancy thing on it. So I said, I can't remember what it was at the time. So I gave her a credit card. She just shook her head. So now we go to a meeting with the engineers from KME to go over the truck. And the guy that owned Bulldog Fire Equipment, which was in Hopkinton, Mass, a section of Hopkinton, Mass called, can't remember the name of it, but anyway, it was in Hopkinton. And the owner said, this chief just bought his own stuff. He says, yeah, the lady at the store just called me up and said, who's the guy with the beard that's a fire chief? Said, oh, yeah, that's Rock. Why? He just bought some things up and he paid for it himself. Really? Because I knew there was one selectman. If he found out, you can, but it has to be under $50. And I had like $200 worth. I had shirts. I had my daughter wants. So anyway, he said, yeah. And the owner of the company said, why did I said, well, there was one selectman that was on me, but I'm not going to say anything. So I just bought it. So the owner of Bulldog, I said to him, you got a couple of Bulldog baseball caps? Yeah. I brought him back. I gave him one to this selectman and gave one to Tracy Blaze, who was a treasurer at the time. And actually, it was more like she's now the town, she's not the town manager.
I think she's the accountant in Newbury.
In Newbury, but no, she does account, but I mean, she's got what's the title? Not town manager, because you can hire and fire, but a town, not a clerk, but anyway, administrator. I gave one to her. So I saw this person a couple weeks later, and I said, hey, how do you like that hat? He said, yeah, pretty good. I said, you stop and thank Bulldog Fire Equipment for getting you that hat? I thought you bought it. I never said I bought it. I just said, here's a hat. Gotcha. So, but it was under $50, so.
Didn't count.
Nope, didn't count. But just the idea of it, I'm like that a lot. I have to be careful. But now I'm retired. I can say anything I want. So the schools always get more. Of course, they get written up. If they have any extra money, they don't have to return it. If I have extra money in my budget, it had to go back to the general treasury. So the finance committee called us in, and the engineers, and they said, why all of a sudden, like in April and May, all of a sudden you spend all this money? I said, buying equipment or something. Well, if you need it, why don't you spend the money in, in October or September? Well, I says, I like keeping it there. What if I had a breakdown with a truck? I want to get it fixed. I don't want to have to wait for a town meeting to get me more money. Then I'll buy what I think to help us. You should spend your money. So they gave me this big lecture. Yes, sir, will do. So come June of the following year, I made an appointment with the board, the finance committee. And what are you here for? I says, I need money. For what? So the board of fire engineers, so we can get paid. What are you talking about? Well, you made me spend it all during the day, whatever. So I need this. This broke, and I need that, and I have no money to pay for it. Oh, you told me to do that. And somebody on the board, he said, yeah, we kind of did, didn't we? And I said, yeah, you did. So they didn't bother me after that, let me spend the money. I mean, I was pretty good about it. I didn't buy anything that we really didn't need, and it always worked out. And I always could call on the guys that do what we had to do at different times, so it worked out. I was president of the Essex County Fire Chiefs Association for a year. We always took turns for a year. Then they made me the sergeant at arms. We never had that before. And so what's this? Oh, we voted the committee or the board of directors voted you, made you sergeant at arms. And he gave me a sheet of papers. And I goes, this is more than what I had to do when I was president. I said, just trying to shut me up? He said, yeah, basically. That's what. So I just start the meeting off with a salute to the flag, moment of silence or whatever, and then I always have a firefighter's prayer, different prayers that I've picked up over the years. And
can you do that to this day?
Yeah. And I go to the state chiefs meetings, usually at a golf course, and they go out and play golf after that. If the meeting's going to be interesting, I'll go to it. They used to have it over at the Chinese restaurant there in Peabody, Saugus actually, that big Chinese restaurant.
Oh, on Route 1?
Yeah, Kowloon. Mm-hmm. They have one there. I make sure I go to that one because the food is really good. And when you're retired, they only charge you like $5 or $10 for the meal, so you can't go wrong there. But no, I stay with it. I probably too much. I'm so busy now. I just had a meeting last night with the president of the Georgetown Erie 4 Fire Department. It's a separate private fire department in this town of Georgetown. They actually, with COVID funds, they actually bought us a new truck. We've bought our own vehicles since 1854, but with COVID killed us with all our money raising events. I couldn't, we just couldn't have enough money. I bid on a truck out in Indiana, but it was going to cost us like $5,000 just to have it shipped here. You don't want to drive it that far, and we just couldn't do it. So Chief Matt McKay, who's also a member of Erie, was able to talk to the selectmen into getting a fire truck that would fit, because we had to have it specially built, because we don't have big doors. The standard door now is like 14 by 14, 14 by 12, but we had to have it specially made because our doors are only 10 by 10.
Oh, wow. Is it historical building?
No, the first building burnt in 1915, and the guys put together and built a new, like a garage. Then we put a addition on the side, all glass front, because we have the Erie 4 hand tub, but that doesn't go to musters. And we put a second story on it, so we have a function hall, and we rent it out to people. Then there's the Civil War Roundtable of the Merrimack River, which is a group I joined a couple years ago, they have some good speakers about the Civil War. Learned a lot of different things about the Civil War that, you don't read about, but these are professionals that did not realize that a lot of the Union generals of the Civil War stole their horses. Custer was one of the biggest ones, I guess. Grant had said at the end of the war, that you got to give the horses back to the people, the farmers. They need their horses to do anything. So somehow Custer got his horse taken up to some place in Wisconsin, and they did find it after a while. And I don't know who was president. I'm trying to think of who was the head person. Maybe it was Grant too. They said, "Well, I can't do anything now about it." He says, "Because all the other guys gave their horses up," and I guess that was quite a big Gronfalcal mess for a while. That it was pretty much hidden, But like I said, it was interesting. We had one fella show up as a cavalry from the south, Southern States Cavalry, and that was neat. And he had a lot of stories about different cavalry moves and stuff like that. That's interesting. So, but other than that, and different fire things, and on the board for the Riverview Cemetery in Grove, and the one on Main Street. I'm president of the Merrimack Cemetery off of Pleasant Street in town. That's where my family is, and that's where I'll be going. Maybe not this afternoon, but at some point in time, I told my wife, I said, "You're gonna have to cremate me. There's nobody gonna be able to do this mustache if I'm not there." So
that's a great point. Great point.
So I said, we got some nice, and besides, I said, a coffin takes up so much room. In one coffin space, I can put five vials of ashes. So we also can put ashes on top of a coffin too. So I mean, you could do a lot. So I bought, I don't know, 7 or 8 lots down there for the whole family. So they're all calling me up. I said, I'll find a place for you when you go. Well, don't go ahead of us. I said, thanks for the thought. So, yeah, no, it's been a good run. I've really enjoyed my stay here. When I first moved in 1958, we came from Middleton. I said, "Dad, what is with this place?" I mean, it was so small.
What brought the family here?
My dad got sick of Middleton. He worked for the State Department of Education. He was the superintendent of schools there for a while. And he said, "The heck with it," and got a job working for the State Department of Education. Well-rounded. He was a full bird colonel in the Army Reserve. He was in World War II in the Pacific Theater. He was going out to be promoted from lieutenant colonel to colonel and graduate from Command and General Staff College. He wound up teaching a little of that at the Boston Army base. It was 1963. I was graduating from high school. I remember he said, "Hey, honey," he says to my mother, "what's the budget look like?" She said, "Why?" I said, "I got my master's degree. I went to UNH. I went to BU, and I never got a class ring." She says, "How much are they?" I don't know. At the time, maybe $40 or something like that. Because he didn't get paid a whole lot from the state, And she said, "Oh, yeah, we could do that." So, and I said, "Hey, Mom, what's the budget look like? What do you want?" And they said, "Well, I'm graduating this year too, and I want a class ring." "You buy your own." So I was working part-time for the Haverhill Gazette on Saturdays as a photo engraver anyway, so I bought my own. It was.
You earned it yourself.
Oh yeah, that was fun though. No, he then we got into 4-H, and my dad got a kick out of it. We raised sheep, we raised pigs. We were in friendly with another family in town, the Browns. They lived on Crane Street. He was a bank president in Malden. He was also in the Army Reserves. And to go back to the Indian Hill Farm, the fellow was lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve, and he and my father would ride in. It was every Thursday, like every other Thursday or something like that. My mother would be so nervous when Ed was turned to drive, because she knows he'd like to stop for a few on the way home. My father would have one drink, it would be a Manhattan, and it was only if he ever went out. But That's when I learned French because my grandparents on my mother's side were French. They came down from Canada to work side by each in the shoe shops, yeah, and and they would go over there. My nana and my mom would be speaking French. My mom spoke, but it was Canadian French. But I know they were talking about me, but but it didn't work. I just didn't have the thing to really pay attention to what I was supposed to be doing as far as my French class went. But anyway,
That's all right.
so.
It's French and shorthand.
Yeah, I know it. That was unreal. But yeah, what I really enjoyed was business law. You know, that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. But as I say, when my dad died, I just went, and I wasn't really into college that much anyway. So, but I had a good working experience in West Newbury, working for a couple of builders and some electricians and stuff like that. So I got around, learned a lot.
When your family came here from Middleton, was there a sense that you were outsiders, that the people had been in West Newbury forever treated you differently?
It took a while, but no, I didn't feel it. Pawtucket had just opened up that year in '58, and their first graduating class was '59. We moved here in December, and it was during the December holiday for the kids. So I had a friend of mine come up from Middleton. So at the time, you know where the sign is for the food mart? All right, there was a diner there where that sign is, the West Newbury Diner. So we went down there and said, we'll get a hot chocolate or something, you know. So we go down there, and all of a sudden we're walking in the street against the traffic. This car pulled up. Guy jumps out of the car, starts yelling at us, why aren't you walking on the sidewalk? And I said, it's not plowed, sir. We got that much snow on it. Carol Curry had just gotten hit and killed walking in the street because they had nothing to do with the sidewalk. So anyway, he's going on, and I said, we just moved here, you know, down at 214 Main Street, the old, can't remember the name of the people that used to live there, but anyway, he said, I'm the police chief. Does Shike Willis mean anything to you? I said, no. Does Ray Dower mean anything to you? He said, no, don't be wise. I'm the police chief. So all right. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but where I come from, they wear uniforms. You know, I didn't know. So he was in his civilian clothes, had a great looking brand new 58 Chevy. I think it might have been red in color. I went home as a dad. Thanks a lot. You know, I mean, moved to this cow town. Me and my brother Rick, we were just like, what is going on? And I went to Pawtucket, and that was different because they had all three towns. And Triton opened up a year later, I think it was, because I was in the 8th grade at the Howe Manning School, and they had a big get together for all the juniors and seniors at the Howe Manning School to meet other people from Boxford and Topsfield. And I'm trying to think, it was in Topsfield. It was like a little record hop to meet people because they're all going to go to school together. So that was neat. So, but I went in cold turkey, just trying to figure out my way around.
As a freshman.
8th grader.
An 8th grader.
Yeah, because they had all six, 7 through 12 when we first went there. Man. So, but it seemed like a cow. It was a cow town. I mean, the different things that went on. We used to hear the boats coming down river or coming up river, blow their horn. We'd get on our bicycles and ride down to the bridge and watch them open the bridge. You know, that's a swing bridge. You know, and at the time, if we got down there early enough, they used to let a couple of us ride, get on the bridge. They have a big, I actually have a card of that showing them walking the thing to open up the bridge. And had to be careful because once in a while, if it didn't lock correctly, they shut the bridge down, and have to go around.
Yeah. So they would let you boys ride on it while it was opening.
Yeah. That's kind of neat.
That's pretty fun.
Well, it's just, now it's a company that does it. I used to know it too. They're contracted to keep that bridge going, but the people that they lived in Rocks Village, and he and his wife would come out there and do it themselves. It'd take a while walking around and around like that. They still open it that way. Yeah.
I've never seen it open.
Yeah, well. Yeah. Well, that's why they built the Groveland Bridge so high, so they don't have to open it up as much. And when they redid that. But when we were at West Newbury, we were always at the bottom of the can, it seems, because they fixed the Haverhill side with a steel structure long before West Newbury got involved. So I've got a lot of pictures of the West Newbury side still as a covered bridge and steel on the other side of the center mark, the icebreaker. Yeah, they should have them in that file.
So the part that moved was the West Newbury side?
No, the middle.
Okay. Oh, the middle part. And so the either side, the West Newbury side would be wood, and the Haverhill side was metal.
Yeah. I mean, after a couple of years, they changed it, but
Yeah.
I mean,
So it's up to the town.
we actually closed the bridge one time. We had a lot of water coming. We had a big flood, and we had to shut down River Road down towards where Coffin Street comes in, because the water went over the road there. The state came up and said, we're going to shut down the Groveland Bridge, because they were really afraid of it. He says the Rocks Village Bridge is pretty strong. We don't really think, but if you see water, you see how the front of it is pointed like that?
Yeah.
That's to break up the ice and stuff as it comes flowing down. So he says, if it gets to the top of the icebreaker, shut the bridge down just in case.
What year was this?
I don't know. I didn't know I was going to have to take a test. I really can't remember, but we were standing by it. It was crazy. We had one of our trucks was a big 4-wheel drive fire truck that we bought in '69. So I'm pretty sure it was after that. We were checking the houses out, as make sure everybody was all right. And then one house on the right, going up River Road, heading towards Newburyport, house on the right was starting to flood out, and we went down there, and we said, man, we got to get you out of here. And all of a sudden, I heard a noise, and I opened up the cellar door. The bottom of the cellar had blown out from the pressure coming in, so we got her out of there. So the next day, myself and Steve Cashman, actually, he had a day off, we went to check the house out, and as we went out to the back of it, the sun came out, the water was going down, it was beautiful. All of a sudden, Steve hollered, I'm not going. I went, what's the matter? There was must have been 30 or 40 snakes had gotten together on a rise, and they were all writhing, thriving, and moving from the sun, It was, oh my God, it was crazy. And apparently Steve did not like snakes. And I wasn't that thrilled either, but they weren't poisonous. I mean, they're just, some water snakes, some garter snakes, so that was interesting. But she had to have the house raised up and new cellar floor done and everything else. Yeah, it was pretty heavy for a while. It's tough. It's tough for these kids. They want to be on the fire department, but there's not enough money around to pay everybody what they really need. What was it? I just read one town in stopped their July 4th celebration. It's been on the news. They just had a town meeting and they didn't want to pay the override to have fireworks this year, so there'll be no fireworks. They had, I think, $50,000 or something, and all the money that was donated, the selectmen said they're going to put it in a fund and not return it and use it, and hopefully they can get more money and have fireworks next year. But everybody's under the gun. Everything is so expensive, it's ridiculous. I got gas last week and I was real thrilled. It was only $4.17. And I have learned that my truck has a 36-gallon tank. I don't let it go below a half. I don't let it go much below a quarter before I go over there to get gas, and just have to watch what you're doing, Ooh, it's tough. It is tough. No, I'm very, very pleased. The guys, I always like to think that the guys gave me a heck of a send-off because they like me or just glad to get rid of me. But I had a whale of a retirement party.
It was a celebration.
Yes, it was. They rented the Elks Hall in Newburyport, and my whole family was there, and it worked out great. We had a lot of good times, a lot of good food. The we had a lot of people there. Oh God, State Senator Bruce Tarr was there. So he always liked to go last. And my wife said, I'll go anywhere with you if Bruce Tarr's going to talk. She says, I just love the way he brings things. And he likes to go last because he takes a little bit of what everybody else has said and ties it into what he wants to say. And he's very good at it. So he gets up on the stage and he says, Chief, come on up. So I got up on the stage and we were sitting at the other day. So I said, Jill, you want to hand me that seat, that chair? So I haul the chair up with me and I sit down. Folks, this could be long. I know him. And so he had a few things to say. And we went back and forth. And after it was all over, we had people coming up to us and said, how long did you guys practice that? Practice what? The back and forth the way you guys did. I said, I do it naturally. Bruce does it naturally. We just hit off each other. And it was really a good time. And I had a lot of chiefs. I told them I didn't do it alone. I had a very good board of fire engineers when we first got out. Kippy Burkabush, the chief's brother, Steve Arnold, myself. Then it got a little convoluted toward the end of my career. That at one point in time, the selectmen wanted this person and they didn't want that person. They didn't dare get me off. But at one point in time, we had 5 or 6 members of the Board of Fire Chiefs, and I think I had like 4 deputy fire chiefs. I didn't need 4 deputy fire chiefs. I only needed 1 or 2, And then it didn't become so much fun towards the end of it, But I'm glad I actually got voted off for 1 year when there was a few things done. The Board of Fire Engineers changed, and I only had a year and a half to go before I turned 65 anyway. So I got voted off. Merrimack called me up and put me on their Board of Engineers, said, we just voted you in, you're a new safety officer. Byfield Fire Department called me up and said, we heard with Merrimack, you're on our department, you respond, you're our safety officer. So I was still going, and then the following year, the Board of Fire Engineers changed again, and this time they voted me back in. I only had that 1 year to go, so I was able to retire as fire chief. And like I said, they had so many people at that, my stepkids and my own daughter, they had a big surprise retirement party for me over at the 1910 building a couple of weeks ago, maybe last month, I guess. Yeah, they had they called a bunch of people up, and it was good. It was a lot of fun.
Month?
Yeah, I mean, I turned 80 in January, and I think the party was in March, I guess, or April or something like that. I don't know. I didn't want anything, and but my wife told him, well, I'll talk to Rock because I know he'll be upset if, there are certain people that he would like there and you guys don't know. So, and she did a great job, getting everybody together and stuff. And it was just a good time. Like I said, the chiefs that helped me out, were good. And they thanked me. I mentioned them at my retirement party. I said, I'd like all the fire chiefs that are here, please stand up, and I want to thank you all for helping me. We had a fire on Main Street up here, and I was out front like it's supposed to be, and the Merrimack chief showed up and the Groveland chief showed up. I had called them for help. The place was like a fortress. We couldn't get in. The guy that lived there was a captain, and he was in charge of the Lawrence jail for the county. So he didn't want anybody. We wound up cutting a hole in the side of the building just to get at it. Started in his oil burner had backfired or something. But I'm standing there, and I got the chief on either side of me. You going to vent the roof? I says, no. The fire's in the basement. I don't need it going all the way up through. I says, if it gets beyond, no, we could do this. I said, now I got these guys really on me. And I said, no. And finally, we were able to gain entrance. We got the garage door open. We had one of my smaller lieutenants. He crawled under there. And then he couldn't get the door open to the house to get down to the cellar because that was a big steel door he had down there. And no, it worked out very well. And so we were able to get that out. And like I say, I said, I got on the radio and I said, I want every window in the house open and I better not hear any glass breaking. And that's when the Groveland chief, he said, I heard what you said. He said, that was pretty cool. He says, I said, well, I meant it. And then we had a fire on Thanksgiving. Yeah. And it was over off of Ash Street. And the same thing. We had a crew inside working, and they wanted, the guys wanted to vent the roof. I goes, no, let's not vent the roof. I know what happened. The roof. Then they made a complaint to the Board of Fire Engineers that I wasn't following the procedures. I said, I'm the chief. I'll do what I want. I'm still responsible to the Board of Fire Engineers because they're the ones that vote the chief in. I said, there's one particular guy, but he was being prompted by somebody else. And I said, the fire was not inside. It's a wooden roof. They had made wooden shingles was the roof. And I said, what happened was they had a party or something, Thanksgiving, and they put some paper in the fireplace, and the burning paper went up the chimney and wound up on the roof. And that's what I said, the fire's on the roof. So I had a guy, one of my captains, go in with a crew, and he was able to get up into the attic area and get it out that way rather than try to, it would just mess everything up. So I said, next time, I says, you want to complain about what I do, learn what's going on first. You know, like I said, I didn't have time to explain to him why I didn't want the thing vented because it already self-vented because the fire was coming up through and lit the roof on fire. And then about a week later, I got a really good letter, one of those feel-good letters from the insurance company, thanking us for what a great job we did. Yeah, I made him read it.
Nice. I didn't even know that happened. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, but like I said, the same with the church fire. It's self-vented. We just had to get at it. Yeah. Make it come to a certain spot, relieve the pressure inside so you don't have, any back. That's another thing you got to worry about too. Is a backdraft explosion. Blow you right out the window. You got to be careful. That's why you see them open the windows. They should be standing from the side. We went to Merrimack on a mutual aid, and I wasn't chief then, and it was right along the river, and there was a window up there. You could tell a fire was in that room. And so I grabbed an axe. I had the guys throw a ladder up there. I put my helmet on backwards to protect my face, and I hunkered down. I turned around on the ladder, and I hit with the axe over my head, and what a whoosh. I mean, that thing come out, and Kippy Burke was downstairs. He says, hey, Rock, he says, you would not believe the pressure. He says, I bet it came out close to 20 feet before it started to rise, So, I mean, that could have gone at any time, but we got to it in time. If I had waited any longer, we'd have all been picking glass out of our butts, You have to, take the chances sometimes. I probably played it a little too close to the edge at times, but I just knock on wood. I just thank God I didn't lose anybody in the line of duty. That used to bother me. I'd have nightmares over that, seriously. And like the guy that died in Boston the other day, the guys he worked with, they must be devastated. It's tough to lose somebody. We lost Kenny Fowler, Donnie's son, from the food mart. And he died. He was only 30-something years old, and he just had a heart attack and died in his sleep, And I was working, and police chief at the time was Lisa Holmes. She called me up because, she was going crazy. And I called the superintendent up, and I said, I got to leave. And he says, I got a problem at home, excuse me. And so I got back to town, and Lisa met me at the station, and we went down to the Anajax Hospital, and he had gone. That was a tough blow. He was a lieutenant, and I really think he would have probably gone even further. He just knew his stuff. I mean, as far as he was a mechanic too. He was good. He was a real motorhead. And I can remember, like, in one of the trucks, there was something, and I said to him, yeah, no, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. And then I said, the guy, well, I don't know. Then I said, Kenny, can you go check it out? So Kenny went and checked it out. And he says, yeah, no, it'll be fine. So I knew you know, that if I said it, maybe the guys, but if Kenny said it, it's good, So yeah, that was always good. And then that's when we started the Kenny Fowler Foundation. That's why his name is on the side of one of the trucks on one of the doors. And yeah, we raised money. We don't have to. We had car shows. We had all sorts of things to raise money for some scholarships for anybody going into public safety or going into automotive or mechanical. I guess there's quite a college that for out in Detroit or something, for somebody that's going to get into automotive field and all that. So we gave out scholarships. Now there's enough money. The scholarship lives off the interest that it has, Yeah. And John Cena was a big help. Oh, God, you can't say anything bad about John Cena in front of me, I'll tell you. The guy is awesome. He really is. He's done more for the Make-A-Wish Foundation than anybody. He bought a real tricked out Camaro and gave it to us to raffle off. The guy that won it was a Merrimack firefighter. And I said to him one day, I said, "Hey, how's that Camaro running, Rock?" "I'm gonna kill myself." He says, "That is so fast." He says, "I traded it in and got the truck of my dreams." He goes. Oh, and yeah, he came in one day when he was on and sat down and gave out autographs. I think it was like $10 a piece, and all the money went to the Kenny Fowler Foundation, Yeah, it really is. It really is. The last time I saw him, I was talking to him, and I says, "Oh, tell that Wayne Johnson character, the guy they call the Rock." I says that I had the nickname before he was born. And so John says, "I think you're right." I know I'm right. But yeah, so I had a good career. Like I said, I didn't lose anybody. Kenny's was not in the line. A couple of guys wanted to try to make it, a line of duty death, I meant. And but Donnie came to me and said, "Don't do it." He wasn't working on anything because he used to take like the forestry trucks down his garage at the house and do work on them or something like that. He says he wasn't doing that. He was, he was home. I said, "That's fine." I said, "I had a hard time trying to make that a line of duty death anyway. It was tough. It was tough to do, So we had a good send off for him. As the fire department sent to overdo it a bit, but then again, like I said, it's a stressful job. It's a job where you put everything on the line, So, like I said, a few times I probably overstepped my bounds. Knock on wood, I was lucky that nothing happened and everything worked out. And here I am. So, oh God, no, I've had a good life. I've had a good life with a great woman right now. Yeah, I had a practice wife.
How long have you been married to this wife?
30 years.
30 years.
Yeah, we celebrated 30 years on Memorial Day. I'm in my 31st year.
Wow.
Yep. So far it is. Actually, at my retirement, the guys always liked her quite a bit. She always went with me. And I know other fire chiefs' wives that the guys just can't stand around. They'll walk in like they were the fire chief. That's dirty. You got mahogany, anything. When I retired, a couple of guys got together and they took a miniature fire axe, which is a ladderman's axe, and put it on a wooden thing. And they said to Jill, West Newbury's car 1.5, for her years with car 1, and because they all called her car 1.5. We had the big bonfire on Bridge Street, okay? I'm down on Bridge Street talking with the owner's wife. And Kippy Berger was his car 3. And car 3 to car 1. "Go ahead, car 3. "Yeah," he says, "Where are you?" I says, "I'm down at Bridge Street talking with Mrs. Kimball about the." "Oh, well, car 1.5's looking for you." "Car 1. All right, I'm down here." And then Jill came down over and she's shaking her head. He says, I'm cow 1.5 now. Well, they all started calling the cow 1.5. My phone was ringing off the hook all day long. All the other guys in the towns, who's cow 1.5 in West Newbury? And I was, and that's Rock's wife. And so there's this nice little plaque we got hanging down there. Yeah, it was a big kick.
That's funny.
Yep.
That's good.
So they liked her. They thought if they had complaints, they'd go to her. They didn't want to see me. No, I'm very, very lucky. And her kids, her husband had passed away. And her kids are really, really good. They were very young. Her oldest was a junior in high school, I think, when she and I got together. But no, it was good. They put this party together and got my other daughter involved. So it was good. Not a problem.
That's great.
I can't think of anything else.